Hi, it's Stu, and this is a TBR video. I'm not done with my last, it's been more than 10 days now. I'm reading quite a bit slower, but my last reading period's TBR, which included books that were kind of like cleanup at the end of my summer reading and didn't really have a prompt. Admittedly, there were some books that I didn't enjoy. Period. I think there's a book whose offer I'm clearly not into. I think there's another book who I wouldn't have been, which I wouldn't enjoy that much anyway, but I found myself kind of like putting pressure on my own self to finish books or to try to engage in books long past the realization that I wasn't interested in them. And since it was more than one book in a row, I felt a bit of a slump. We all go through reading slumps. I don't need to overthink it, but I also just want to continue to reflect on why I read. And right now it's for entertainment and leisure. Sometimes to relax, because reading does relax me and keeps my mind off of the day-to-day grinding stresses. And then also I really like to explore and build knowledge and empathy. So I just want to say that here in this video so that when I'm continuing to think about reading a book, of course, I want to give all books a chance. There's too many, so we know we have to have some kind of discernment. But when I'm in a book, I want to make sure that I'm not having fun, not feeling relaxed, not building empathy or knowledge, or several of those together. I've decided to make a prompt to keep it kind of fun, but to keep it a little bit grounded for the next probably 2 weeks at this reading pace of reading. And that prompt is trees on the cover. Trees just feels like such a powerful prompt for the autumn, as we've just experienced the last day of summer not too long ago, because leaves are going to start to change, and it does put us in that sort of cozy contemplative mood of seasons and what they mean, what they symbolize. But trees also, like the one on this cover, right, also have a lot of symbolic meaning through their roots. And I also have been going through a stage of life change. And so because things have changed in my life to make me move into a new stage of life, it really brings me back around to thinking about my roots, to thinking about systems, as trees are built in systems, like and family, and all of the things that trees symbolize. So I feel like grounding myself in a reading prompt can kind of help me out of this maybe a little bit of a slump. I have several books from summer reading that have come off my hold shelf on Libby. I might intersperse and read them. I might just let them go. Like some of them I delayed the hold more than once, and I just don't want them sitting around on hold unless I have some kind of a future plan to read them. It might be next summer, and it's okay, honestly, if it's not anytime soon or ever. There's so many books out there to read. There's so many books now, even in my pretty extensive personal library, which, if you don't know, I 100% haul from thrift stores, friends of the library, book sales, and or membership, and little free libraries. And then 100% I unhaul into little free libraries, donations to the friends of the library, or give to friends and loved ones, to try to keep all within the spirit of keeping reading communities, reading fellowship alive. Let's get into the books. The prompt is trees on the cover. The first book is called Homeland Elegies, a novel, and this is by Ayat Akhtar. Ayat Akhtar. This is an American novel, and this is an American story. I'm to understand it's a domestic fiction. slash historical fiction. It's centered around the events of 9/11 and how they impacted very particularly a family, I believe. Ayad Akhtar, I believe, is a Pulitzer Prize winner for drama. So this might be his first, maybe his only novel. I'll certainly look that up more, maybe. Because, I mean, those are interesting things to know for us bookish folks, right? But I'll look into that more before I review it, or maybe as I'm reading it or towards the end of reading it. This cover really spoke to me. I believe I talked about it on the haul video, and the accolades on the front are by Salman Rushdie. And so that kind of gives you a clue, the caliber of reader and accolader. This very much is gonna, I believe this is gonna be dense and heavy, beautiful and tragic, like the book that I have just finished, which was brilliant. And I think, I mean, for sure, then this falls under literary fiction with maybe a little bit of historical fiction there as well. The next book, similar kind of cover, very different book. The next book is Tana French's In the Woods. This is a mystery suspense set around Dublin, and I think in historical times. 1984. So in my lifetime, but you know, in historical times. This book, however, was not published then. This book is published more recently in 2008, so still nearly 20 years old. But here we have a story, I believe, of some missing children around Dublin, and then it's going to end up being a suspense. Clearly, there are trees on this cover, as the title is In the Woods, and this is an author from Dublin. Man, those Irish authors don't do light and cozy. Let me not overgeneralize. I'm sorry if you're Irish or an Irish author and you're like, stop stereotyping me. You would be right, but in my experience, let me say it exactly the way I should. My experience recently with Irish authorship is there have been no light and cozy. As this is a suspense, it's generally cozy isn't what suspense goes for. I expect this one to also be heavy. So I think this is a good time to interject between these two heavy books. If I do indeed read them in that order, I need one of those summer reading that was just fluffy and popcorny and meaningless, other than people's, I don't want to say meaningless ever, but the intention of the book was to fully entertain with light, fluffy, entertaining, easily accessible words on a page. Then that could be that. Okay. Tex and Molly in the Afterlife has these fantastic little trees on the cover. And if this is very much what it appears to be, this is about Tex and Molly, and they encounter a sudden and tragic death, and then find themselves in some sort of between world where they meet, I believe, other people who have passed, but they also meet like spirits and like fairy type things. There's a very much a fantasy element to this book. This book feels drug inspired, a bit trippy, which may or may not be true. That's just the vibe I'm getting. And this book was published in the late 90s. So this, 1998, I believe, by Richard Grant. This is a book that I would have read in the late 90s. I might get part of the way into this book and be like, oh, I know these characters, or I know this story. Because let's be honest, I don't have a catalog of every book I've read, and I've read a lot of books in my life. And if I've only read it once, or maybe read part of it, but not all of it, because that happened quite a bit in my late teens, then I wouldn't necessarily have remembered it. So maybe I've read this before, maybe I haven't. I say this time and time again, will these authors from the 90s hold up into contemporary standards of how we tells stories about women, about people, about settings. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, the next one, speaking of older authors, is Harper Lee's Go Set a Watchman. It has an amazing tree here on the cover with some falling leaves and a highway where we can see, you know, something leaving off in the distance. Oh, sorry, that's a train. A train's coming at us. A train's coming at us. So much symbolism just on the cover. This book, I think, as many people who read know, was published recently, so posthumously, by a publishing company of Harper Lee. I don't know the exact story, but I remember when I hauled the book, and also a couple other books I have and have read, which had authors whose manuscripts were published after their death, and some of whom said, destroy these or don't publish these. It put me into a little kind of a philosophical, maybe philosophical / ethical contemplation of, is that an okay thing to do? This is a book by an author who won the Pulitzer for To Kill a Mockingbird and had acclaim as an author. So I am curious to know the circumstances of why this book wouldn't have been published then while she was alive, because I meant to understand that it wasn't one of those she was in the middle of it, because those exist too. I say all this to say that I feel a kind of way, and also, given that Franz Kafka also, for sure, wanted all of his manuscripts, for sure. Check my source. Where's my source? Franz Kafka wanted all of his manuscripts destroyed. When he died of tuberculosis in his early 40s, he told whomever, maybe his good friend who had them, just destroy these. They don't need to be in the world. And the good friend didn't do that. And here, the whole entire literary world, and maybe that's a very broad statement, but in my opinion, the whole entire literary world and me myself has greatly benefited from that man not behaving in an ethical way and consenting to Kafka's last wishes. I don't know the hype around this. I don't know the reviews around this. We know that Harper Lee can write a substantial book. So is this also another one? It's the sequel. I believe it's happening 10 or 20 years later with the same character, Scout, as To Kill a Mockingbird. I have been pretty excited to read it since I hauled it. And of this pile, this is my only thrift shop haul, meaning this is the only book that I actually paid money for, albeit $4. I'm glad that it really fit neatly into this prompt, and it feels like a book that I'm going to be really excited to read. The last book is a very recent haul. It's a book of the month. So that always denotes a certain amount of hype or popularity, or at least accessibility to the popular reading community. It absolutely has an amazing tree on the color. It's the thing that compelled me to it. And in the box where I took this and exchanged one other book, there were several other books that I was interested in, and I had to be discerning. I mean, I just had to collect. I had to choose. I wouldn't even say discerning. I had to choose based on the moment that I was in, because I certainly have more than enough books in my library to not haul more than one out of a little free library, even if I know I'll come back later and donate more books. This is a retelling of Narnia, and it's an adult fantasy. I said in the haul video, Narnia has a lot of nostalgia for me. I read it with my younger brother, and I've never been fully a fantasy. I'm not a fantasy girly. I'm really not. It's not if I said I'm just going to read 5 fantasy books, I might struggle with that. I would have to come back and reflect on why would I challenge myself in that kind of a way. There is something that does intrigue me a little about an adult retelling of Narnia. I do like retellings. It is something that I dig. I like to see how the author likes to reimagine and likes to give the homage if they are indeed doing that. So this is the last book. There are 5. There are 5 books in this sort of reading prompt, and I have as long as I need or want to read them, of course, but I usually set my aims on, like, you know, beginning of weekend to end of weekend kind of thing, 10 days. Sometimes I do it in less, sometimes I do it in more. I really continue to want to just read at my own pace. So it's good to have things to look forward to. It's good to have narrowed so part of the reason I do this is to narrow my whole library down, so I don't feel overwhelmed by choice, and to kind of keep what is a consistency. I believe in theme due to the choices of the cover. There is going to be some thread that ties these books together. I love to find that, but they are very diverse, from sort of contemporary in the 90s to contemporary lit fic in the later 2000s, to a couple of different kinds of fantasy, to a suspense. So we got some genre fiction in here. We got a beloved author that I know, which is Harper Lee. We got a book that maybe I've read before. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I'm glad I made this video, and I'm glad that I chose these books so that I can kind of pull myself out of what felt like a little bit of slump